outcasts. Like they need to start, their own civilization as being mixed people. Because, before then, of course, Africans and then the Asians took over most of the lands, and we already set up civilizations. And all was left really was the hottest places nobody wanted to be, which you could say Mesopotamia, the Middle East or what have you. So that's what they had left to basically take. And of course, the Aryans didn't want to stay up in the cold too much longer. They wanted to come down and basically take from the civilizations they had already established so much. So the Aryans was coming down and mixing with the civilizations. Remember, I talked about the Mani in my video on YouTube about the origins of all the races. And you can see the Mani, which is the indigenous people of Thailand. Remember, they had afros. Yeah, well, they still have afros. These people still exist to this day. When you look at these indigenous people, it's the same thing when you go to like Cambodia, you go to China and Japan, you have dark-skinned Asians still exist to this day, especially in Japan, especially in Thailand with the Mani, and they have an afros. You can see it clear as day. You can see a lot of them look like black people, but we can see, what happened when you look at the Thai people today and the Chinese and Japanese today. They have straight long hair because of the Aryans coming down and mixing in. Now, to me, when I researched this thing and looking at this whole thing, to me, this was a coordinated attack on melanin, which basically leads me to believe that at the top, back then, they understood their deficiency. They understood their problem with melanin, and they basically wanted to weaken the rest of the world. They wanted to basically infect the rest of the world and decrease their melanin. And I'm going to explain later why this is important. And I'm going to explain later why them mixing in, basically it's a good thing and a bad thing. But that's basically what they came to do. They came in, they weakened the people genetically weakened them and made them, less melanin, which melanin is a major thing. So when you understand that, think about that. From the woolly hair, the blackness, the representation of power, melanin, into the straight hair. So that's basically what took place. To me, it was something that they had to understand and know. Now, they did this because they wanted to basically get in power. And once they got in power, we seen the disappearance of the black gods from the ancient world. Remember, they gone. They got rid of them, and we're seeing the rise of these white gods, these unseen gods. And, when you look at Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Vishnu, when you look at Jehovah, Yahweh, Yahweh, all that, these are all gods that's here to basically cover up the black gods, to hide the black gods, to reduce them to a level of secrecy that you can only discover their true origins and identity in secret societies. And that's basically what took place. That's basically what happened. You had all these governments basically get in on this because they themselves are in these secret societies and want to rise up in ranks. So they had to do their part. And again, you have to understand that one ruler at the top, he only think about himself. There is no way you can have one man representing an entire kingdom and not have a set of rules that's basically going to really govern him and limit his power as far as the effect he can have on the entire kingdom. You can't get that power to one person. But when you look at a president and people that had this power to do so much, I know we got a Senate and what have you, but the president has executive orders, so he can basically do what he wants. So these people, these rulers have basically sold their people out, and that's going to make a lot of sense later. They sold them out. So you had these people, the Aryans come down, mix in, weaken the nations, and basically leave, because the more melanin they had, the more stronger, the more tough they would be to conquer and fight. And they understood this. Somebody at the top understood this. I'm telling you, when you do the research, you're going to understand that. So they basically wanted to weaken them. They want them to not understand that this is about melanin, that this goes back to the black gods and what the black gods is really about, which we're going to get into in this video as well. They didn't want the people to understand that, so they took it away. And I want to say that to get it across to people to understand that you have been basically deceived by words and wordplay. Words are magic. You have to understand that it was created for a specific reason, to deceive you and to confuse you. But you have to look through that and understand that at a particular time, these words did not exist, yet the power of what you're bringing together using words was always here, and it has a purpose. Now, when I look back to ancient Kemet and I seen karate, when I seen the depictions of martial arts, to me at first it was just like, well, okay, wow, this stuff was here so long ago. We thought it came from the Orient, came from, the Asians, but here it is in ancient Kemet, old. And to my knowledge, there isn't any depictions of martial arts that predate what we find in ancient Kemet, which we can find going back to 3000 BCE. So unless somebody can produce anything that shows that they had these particular skills and was putting stuff out before then to us, the Egyptians came up with it. They developed the techniques or what have you. But from looking at it, you would just think, hey, this is about, self-defense, martial arts, protection, Kemet always was under threat at some point in time. But when you go back 3000 BCE, it wasn't too much problems that you would think they would need to develop such a, technique and a strategy. So in looking at it on the surface, I was thinking, okay, well, this is the purpose, this is what it was for. But as I have explained and showed you guys, the ancient Egyptians knew the body. They knew about the mind. They knew all of this stuff, and they put it in so many different things. Now, I have talked to you about how hip hop music, how we have the subliminal message, how we have the controlling of our minds and music, and how music affects the brain. I've talked about this countless times and will continue to talk about it. But you have to understand that the ancient Egyptians already knew about it. They understood how music affects the brain. So when you see ancient Egyptian depictions of music bands, them playing musical instruments, we would call it today classical music, developing the mind, stimulating the mind, as I talked about. When you see depictions of them dancing, singing, we would call this stuff, ballet, R&B or soul or whatever. We will call it what we call it. But to them, this was just natural. So when you see these depictions of dancing and, and singing and bands playing and all kinds of stuff that we look at today and we take an entertainment value from it. And we look to ancient Kemet and we would think the same, but it's a lot more to it that the ancient Egyptians understood, and they knew how to get everything out of it. So when we look at, martial arts, when we look at this stuff, these depictions, and we say that, this stuff is martial arts, we think about Kung Fu, we think about karate or what have you, when we see these depictions. But to them, it wasn't such. Of course, they didn't use those names. But the ancient Egyptians understood the movement. They understood what the stuff was really about and what it would do. They understood that these movements not only, strengthen the muscles, but it sharpened the mind. These movements allow energy to flow through the body, to flow in different parts of the body. Different movements just loosen up the body and allow energy to flow, so you can feel energy flowing freely through different parts of the body. And this is one of the main reasons why they did it. It not only, helped sharpen the mind, help you connect muscle memory to, cognitive memory to your consciousness, but it also helped with meditation. It also helped you strengthen the muscles so you can sit in the lotus position, a meditative state, for long periods of time. And this is one of the ways that they did it. This is one of the ways they developed to help you deal with those issues. And this is one of the processes you had to go through in becoming, let's just say like a grand master or a master, or moving up as far as in the ancient Egyptian mystery school. Martial arts was one of it. And you had to understand, about the body, of course, and that these movements were to loosen you up, to help energy flow freely. When the Asians talk about chi flowing through the body, they understood all of this, and that energy needed to flow freely, and you needed to be loose and be able to be comfortable to sit in that lotus position for long periods of time to meditate. So they worked on these things, and this was the purpose of this stuff, to not only, help you with meditation and help energy flow, but to also give you skills as far as movement and combat ability, in any type of altercations that might occur. So when you look at the ancient Egyptians and understand that they had basically what we call classical music. As I said, develops the brain, stimulates the brain, makes you smarter, makes you retain more knowledge. They understood this. When you look at the depictions and see that they have forms of ballet that help with movement, grace, something that help you develop energy-wise. All these things that we see that we find today in our society that we look at too as being refined, showing that these people have class, that they are of a high status because they, partake in such events. So as I talked about in the calculated destruction of the black man and woman, about how they got all dressed up and fancy and went to watch people, put on tutus and do ballet and, play classical music or what have you. This was because they associated these things with, wealth, refinement, or what have you. And many of the people there had absolutely no clue that this stuff goes back to energy, consciousness, and that it's going to develop you better in these areas and help stimulate you. So they basically took the good things from us, from ancient Kemet, the things that will help us develop and stimulate us spiritually and physically. They took these things out of ancient Kemet, kept them for themselves. Told us nothing about it. We just watched and wondered, what are these crazy people doing? Took it for themselves. We were stuck to, just develop jazz, the blues, singing about our sorrows and pain, not listening to music that will help stimulate us. And don't get me wrong, you have the blues and you have jazz that does create good stimulation, but not as such as what classical music, because when you have blues and you have jazz not always, but blues, you have words attached to it. Having words attached that is not going to be, stimulus to the actual sound. So words that's not going to help develop the sound, then it's really no point in having the words. The words could be a problem because, as I talked about, when you combine words with music, that's a message. Words are powerful. You got to be careful what you say. So you don't really want to associate certain words in musical form because they have dual meaning. It's better to just have the music. This is something deep that we'll get into down the line when we get more into music, but the ancient Egyptians understood this. This is why, as I talked about in the frequency DVD, about them combining Satan and putting him with music and, the music industry, and how the word was God and Satan was the music. And when you combine the two, you have basically persuasion. And that's what it was about. So when you understand the parable and what it was talking about, Satan basically played the music, the choir director, you could say, while God was the word. And he spoke, and you combine them and you have song, which music can be stimulating and persuasive. Music on its own without the words can be persuasive. So this is just a whole bunch of things that just go along, with everything. But understand how they took classical music, they took ballet, they took everything that would stimulate them and develop them to be higher and function in higher brain capacities than us. They kept for themselves, and, we end up with gangster rap, hip hop, R&B, stuff that is destroying us mentally and physically, causing the downfall of our civilization, causing the downfall of us. And this is what we have to deal with. And this is what they allow us to promote and make our people rich off, because it's destroying us more than it's helping us. So we got to look at this stuff and understand that if it wasn't ancient Kemet, it was there for a reason. And this stuff we need to come back to and start, developing more ourselves and getting more engaged in ourselves, instead of leaving it to the Europeans to have and take and control when it came from us. And it's crazy when you look at other civilizations, you look at people throughout history that are known for things. They're known for something specific. You look at countries that are known for something specific, groups of people known for something specific. And then you go back to ancient Kemet and you find out, guess what? It was there first. And it's like, damn, no credit was given. Nobody said anything. It's just we was led to believe that certain people developed certain things. And then when we go back to ancient Kemet, we see that it was there first. And, somebody always throw that little depiction in there, whether it's believed that the ancient Egyptians discovered it, or that, it was found first here in ancient Kemet, always to leave doubt that it's possibly somebody who developed it before them. But there's no proof. So it's weird when you find that kind of stuff. But when you go back and you see the depictions of martial arts and you think about, Bruce Lee, who we'll get into a lot in this video, and you think about just martial arts in Asia. And a lot of people don't have no clue exactly where it came from. We just all assume it came from, ancient Asia with the Asians. But when you go to ancient Kemet and look at martial arts, they call it Lotus fighting, which we understood how important the Lotus was to ancient Kemet. It symbolized rebirth with the opening of the petals when the sun rises and the closing of the petals at night. They related it to the sun, of course, which the sun was revered. When you look at it in Buddhism, of course, the same thing. The Lotus symbolized spiritual awakening and purity, because you had a lotus, which is also called a water lily, which basically sprang up, from the dirt, the dirty water, from the water, what have you, and came out and, opened up perfectly clean, pure, no dirt, no mud, no soot, or nothing on the petals. It always sprang and opened up clean and clear. And the Buddhists looked at it as, the lotus made a conscious decision to basically say, I'm not going to get dirty.